This show is brought to you by Manifold Markets. There's a market for everything. Personally, I look at it a bunch when there's a bunch of news going on around politics and trying to say this tweet means something, this particular action means something, and try to see how does that actually impact how people are betting in the prediction market on how that impacts the real life. I use it for sort of triangulating the truth. Highly recommend. Go check it out in the App Store. Welcome to the inaugural show. Meir, I appreciate you joining, man. Why don't you just do the quick intro here? This is the first of all the episodes, but quick intro and yourself and brief background would be super helpful.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chad. Quick intro on me. I've founded a couple of startups, supported a couple of startups, and worked at Google and Microsoft. Right now, I'm VP of product at an AI startup called Gradient.ai, where we automate enterprise workflows using AI agents. And I've known Chad for maybe 5-6 years since he was back
Yeah,
in
it's
school.
crazy. Yeah, yeah, dude. Yeah, it's I think it's been about 5 years. I was actually telling my significant other that we met through this young entrepreneur group, and I remember I don't know if there was a cutoff at 30, but it felt like there was a cutoff at 30, and I was 29 at the time, and I had a kid, and so I felt like very, very old, even in the young entrepreneur group.
Yeah, you'd fit right in we got our picnic coming up in a few weeks. And now it's all kids. It's all parents with kids. I don't have kids yet, but Tony doesn't either, if you remember him. But
Yeah,
a
of
lot of
course.
people have kids. So you would be the perfect person.
Yeah, maybe I need to come back. I mean, I came back, I think in 2019, maybe 2021, something like that. It had been a minute. It might have been the 2021 one when people came back together for the first time post COVID. But yeah, man, it's now it's starting to get uncomfortably long. So we'll see. We'll see. Well, we're gonna try an entirely new format that I've never seen, but I'm kind of interested in trying. You've been so gracious to be the guinea pig, but just for the audience, the idea here is that we're gonna play two-person poker against the internet, and the guest is gonna run be the brains of the operation. I'm gonna run the controls. I'm sure there'll be a couple little moments of us trying to figure out what to go do next and things like that. It's certainly meant to be not necessarily, you don't have to feel the pressure to do every single decision, but I am trying to do it as a bit of like not quite a showcase, but it's like, hey, like, let's get into your mind a little bit. Let's play poker together. Let's see what happens. Let's have fun. I'd love to expand this eventually into like really big buy-ins, give out the winnings to charity, things like that, to see if we can kind of like have a little bit of like the audience pot is sort of invested in the game as well. So that's the intention. That's the hope. We'll see how it goes though. This could be a terrible format. So I appreciate you coming on the roller coaster.
Sounds good.
All right, I'm gonna click I'm ready. So we'll have some time to chat here, but like when did you start playing poker? Like, is this something that's you've done a long time? Like take us through the history.
Yeah, I've played poker for actually a really long time. Probably started playing casually when I was 14, 15 with some of my chess buddies. Uh, just very small stakes. Then ended up doing my senior project in high school on it, which did not make my principal happy at all, because obviously you're not supposed to play poker when you're 18. Um, but I got pretty serious into it when I turned 21 and I could actually play in casinos, played in the World Series, a couple of events there.
Oh,
Uh,
nice. What years would that have been? And by the way, I just mucked a king eight, so try to
yeah.
keep your eye in the thing. Like
Well,
if you see it, throw it in there. But otherwise, I'll probably just fold unless it's something obvious.
yeah. That was 2011. Yeah. So I was doing my first startup and I took a week off to go down, played a couple
Raise
of
some
events.
funding.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I played a $1,500 event, made $3,000. So not a big dent in our funding. But it was super fun. Played some cash games there. I mean, Vegas is like so different from the home games I was playing until then. Um, and then, yeah, that was more recently. I host a game probably once a month here, with some of those people from our founder group and some other people.
That's awesome. And but back then, I guess, was it always no limit hold'em? Did you play some like Omaha? you mix it up at all, or what was kind of where was it? Was
Yeah,
it
I think
exclusively?
always impartial to No Limit Hold'em. That game that I play with my chess friends, we occasionally played Omaha. Um, and then yeah, it's always been No Limit. I think yeah, it's a terrible hand. Let's fold that one. Um, I've always liked the kind of variance that comes from it. I think you need to play a lot of hands to really see your skill, because there's so much variation, but it's more fun to play individual hands.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have an ace three suited early position here. What do you want me to do here? Little mini raise.
Uh, well, somebody's in for 60, so let's call it. Let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens. Our
Oh
first
boy.
hand is ace three of diamonds.
Yeah.
Early position, and blinds are really small for the audience who can't see anything. We're playing 25-cent big blind, but no limit. But most people around the table have about $25. So we'll see what happens. So ace jack eight. What do you
Yeah.
think here?
So, well, we can check to the razor. I think, we have a pair of aces, but they could easily have an ace that's higher ace. See what they do before we have to act. This is one of the problems with playing an ace low.
Right.
You can get in these tough spots.
Dollar raised for us, so it's
Yeah,
about
it's
half
a
the pottage.
wall raise with two hearts. Let's call it. See what they do. Next round. Yeah, we'll check again and see.
So yeah, 10 came down on the
Hopefully,
turn.
if they're betting now, I mean, ace anything is better than our ace. But they might
Oh,
just check.
check. I
Yeah,
don't
so
hate this.
here,
10 on the river.
yeah, let's put in like a $1.75 bet. Yeah, I don't think they have an
75
ace.
and a 351. Oh, hey,
Yeah,
first
there we
hand's a
go.
win.
Got it. Bam.
It's quit now, 100%.
That's our fundraising
Taking
for Chad's new store.
Hey, there we go. King. So the inaugural hand is a win, man. There we go. I got king six suited here on the button. What do you
Uh,
want me to do?
yeah, where would we six-handed, seven-handed? Let's call since we're on the button. I mean, this is a pretty bad hand, but being
Yeah.
on the button gives you a lot of information. I think at these stakes we're probably better players than most of the players here.
That's fair. Yeah, I feel like when I was in college, I had a little bit of a journey. I didn't play in the World Series, but I was playing way too much in college online. And I felt like, yeah, I would crush at like these like 50-cent big blinds or 50 cents dollars, something like that. And then I would go up. And so there's a
Well,
call
we
here
could
to 125.
hold right away here.
Fold it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna call us close, but yeah, you were playing a lot.
Yeah, and then I would like go up kind of that next level, 2-1 or something like that, or 5-250, and then I just get destroyed. And so it was like, oh, like I'm kind of holding my own against a bunch of people who don't know what they're doing, and then I'm going into that next level and getting absolutely destroyed. So that's a fair point.
Yeah, when I thought about getting more serious, I started reading a bit about how some of the pros play it, and that happens quite often to people who are professional players. They'll start playing at, $2.5, $5 maybe, and then they'll try to move up to 5.10 and just lose their entire bankroll, have to go rebuild themselves back at 51, 1-2. Very few people can make it in professional poker.
Yeah.
So
Do you feel like that poker's helped you think through business and startups and some of the technology? Has it been just sort of like how's it kind of fitted in your life when you sort of reflect back into your journey, sort of thinking and logic, probabilities, things like that?
yeah, I think for me, both chess and poker, chess was earlier, poker more recently, have definitely helped. I think Andy Duke's famous book, Thinking in Bets, kind of outlines this whole theory. We can fold that. And I think there's a lot of aspects, especially as a startup person, certainly, that you have to think about, um, about your position in bets, right? You're thinking about, how do I invest this $1 million I raised or $10 million I raised? Do I try two different ideas? Do I try one different idea? Which one has a better expected value, but which one has a better kind of downside protection. You're always thinking about these things. And I think poker really, in a very limited scale, shows you that. Yeah, we can fold that as well. Every hand is that kind of decision. And so I think thinking about it in terms of what are other people doing, how's the market reacting, is very similar of like, oh, what's the TAM of this market? You know, how does the flow go? You know, when you think about probabilities, you've got kind of like your acquisition funnel all the way to monetization. It's very similar in that, you know, you got pre-flop, flop, turn, river.
Yeah.
And then I think your big thing, oh, go ahead.
No, I'm dating myself, but that sounds like a banger Medium post. Of sort of saying like your TAM is like, you know, the pot, and then like how many different people are in there, it's like your competitors and like market share, and yeah, the flop is sort of the early go to market, and the turn is sort of like scaling into the early majority. Like that's a banger Medium post.
Yeah, there we go. Maybe we can co-author one after this.
Jack King offsuit. First
all right, so
after.
Jack King, one of those really tricky hands to play. Let's just fold it here. I mean, we're literally under the gun, so let's go ahead and fold this.
Yeah, I wish this table is a little bigger too, but yeah, go ahead about your Jack King.
Yeah, I mean, Jack King is just tough because so often you're playing against Ace Jack or King Queen, and you have these hands where you think you're winning, but you lose a lot of money. It was the same problem with 3, but we kind of got through it. In a different position, it's nice, but certainly not here. But I was gonna say, the other thing about poker specifically that you realize that, you know, you can make some decisions that are probably the correct decisions and still lose. And I think this is true in startups and work in general. And you just have to keep going. You know, in poker, you should obviously have a limit and not keep going after you've exhausted your financial limit. But in the real world, you've got all these attempts. You know, both you and I have done multiple startups, right? Mm-hmm. And we still have probably many startups ahead of us. And so that's at the startup scale, but even on the decision scale, products, every pivot that you're doing is a new product, a new hand, a new opportunity. And they always come around. So at a poker table, they come around every minute. It's a little slower in the real world. But I think there's so many analogies, and it's just being thoughtful is always valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I want to ask you a question about process versus results once we play this. Presumably, maybe it's this 6-5 suited on the big blind. You want to call this raise here, 42-cent raise, fold?
Yeah.
What do you want to do?
That guy that we had, let's call it.
Yeah.
We had beat last time, so let's see how he plays this. 6-5. This is great hand in the sense that you can get a lot of straights and flushes here. We have just a pair. We might be best, but let's check and see what he does. Again, he raised, so we can make a decision.
He's on his phone. I don't know what kind of intel that is, but he's on his phone. It's either good degen, bad degen, unknown.
He's doing something else, watching Netflix. He's also recording.
Yeah, he's doing a podcast.
Checks. I mean, here we can bet probably the pot or $1 to $1.50. $1 is good. Yeah, pot's good.
Sorry, I
make that
bad controller here. I was trying to get.
Yeah, pot's good too. I mean, I don't think it really matters. Either he has a queen or he doesn't have a queen. He's probably going to react pretty aggressively if he has a queen. He's probably going to fold if he doesn't have a queen.
I imagine if he had a 9, he probably bets. Yeah.
Yeah. I think. Bam, we're taking him down.
Thank you, Jam. That's a win. Another back to back. 8-9 offsuit. You want me to auto fold this or check in, or what do you?
Yeah, this one is not suited, so we can fold it.
Perfect.
Even though we're small blind here.
Yeah. So what I wanted to ask you a little bit about is like process versus results, and I won't put my old founder or co-founder under the bus here too, but you know I've had a bunch of co-founders, and you know I think there's always this big debate. Fold this, imagine.
Yeah.
That there's a big debate around like sort of process versus results, and like I had one particular co-founder who was just very adamant that we had to be results oriented over all things. And I understand that argument, and I agree that there's a certain component that just like we have to hit results. You know, we have a limited shelf life and all these things. But I've also felt like as it relates to building the company's culture and recruiting and sort of like how do we take this larger team and move them towards something, that I also really wanted a heavy part of the sort of performance review, or however you want to think about that, to be process oriented. Like, are we winning and getting better with the company every single day? Because sometimes the executives, we're making a strategic bet that's incorrect. And sometimes the results show up and sometimes they don't, but sometimes we might have we built the right thing at the right time. Fold here, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
You know what? I'm gonna fold unless you jump in there. That's the
that's
new
good.
rule. Uh, and so, but then like there's this balance between the two that I really have never fully landed on. And when I think of sports, I'm almost always certain that it's process oriented over results. But startups might be different. So I was curious, like process, results, a blend. Like how do you think about sort of organizing a team around how they should feel about the blend between those two?
Yeah, that's a great question, and um, I think it's definitely different based on the stage of the startup. So we kind of start at the very beginning of the story. Um, one of the other things I do is I help out this small venture capital fund, well, not so small anymore, Unlock Venture Partners in Seattle. We invest in C-stage startups, $75 million fund. And so we think a lot about how to evaluate these C-stage startups. But then as things go upstream and our startups grow to Series A and Series B, we're watching how they're growing and what they're being evaluated on. And so there's obviously different stages. I think the earlier you are, um, the more you have to think about process because results can be gamed so easily.
Right.
And, I just heard, I think it was Sarah Tavel from Benchmark. She was talking about vanity metrics. And it's just like, it's so easy to just create that $1 million ARR. In the AI space, for example, you could basically sell, compute for half price and you'll have $1 million ARR from your $2 million seed raise. So then you can
Right.
go with money. But obviously that
Right.
doesn't mean anything. So we can clearly see how results can be totally unrelated to value created. Um, but you do have to think about creating value for the customers while following a good process. But I think that the earlier you are, the more the process is something that you should evaluate your coworkers with, your co-founders, your employees, because there is a certain amount of just hard work and dedication to doing things in a certain way that leads to success at these startups, or that's what I've seen both in my own and others that I've watched. Now, how do you actually manage that yeah, we can fold that one. How do you manage that as, a founder or an executive at a startup? It's tough because how do you tell people, we're just looking at your process, right?
Right.
Uh, yes. So there's going to be this tension that you talk about. So I think we are going to look at results and output, but sometimes you actually kind of get a free pass. I think in some of the earlier stages, you don't have results too often, so you can actually just focus on process.
Right. Right.
But once you
Yeah. I
start
mean,
having that, yeah, go ahead.
it was just like one of the things I struggled with is like in Dolly's journey, we started out as this moving business going direct to consumers. It was like just very simple, like, hey, if you need to rent a U-Haul or hire movers, we want you to use Dolly. The end business ended up being a bit of like a B2B to C play where it was saying, hey, let's partner with a Big Lots. And then when the customers at Big Lots, they learn about this as a delivery mechanism, they may or may not use this. And so let's use that to then educate the customer, and maybe retail is actually the whole business, right? And so I always felt like, as we were driving like marketing or something like that, it's like the business is making decisions. Are we a retail business? Are we a consumer business? Like what are we? And then if the team's delivering against, let's say we choose moving, but we're failing, like that's sort of like an executive strategy thing. And like, I don't know if we should punish them. So anyways, we have Jack Apes
Yeah,
offsuit here. You want me to call this
let's
25 or raise?
let's call it 25 and see what
All right.
happens. Ooh, we need a king, so we'll check.
This episode is brought to you by ChatGPT. I absolutely love on my lock screen, I can just tap the little icon, immediately start talking to ChatGPT. I stopped really using Google. It helps me out through basic logic and thinking and conversation. I even prep for meetings. Just kind of say, hey, this is what the meeting's about. Let's kind of role play what that looks like. The app's incredible. Go download it in the iOS store. Okay, so 10, queen, 7 on the flop here. 3 people in the hand. Pot small. Not a lot of action on this table thus far. Dollar bet. What do you think
Yeah.
of the inside straight draw worth it or not?
So, I mean, yeah, mathematically, we've got 4 outs. No way it's going to be worth it at this price.
Well,
I
so
think,
on that, like, sorry, I clicked fold before you said it. We did have the aces, right? I mean, I'm presume that you were like thinking there's too much of a risk then on the I think it was the king mattering in that case.
yeah, so we could have had 7 outs, but that wouldn't have helped the math there either. That's a good point. I was mostly focused on kind of the value extraction we get from the straight, because nobody
I
would be.
see.
But you're right. I think we could have had both the king coming up or the ace coming up.
But I feel like, yeah, part of me feels like had that ace hit, like we would have thought our hand was better than it was. So that's part of like, I think
Yeah,
my noviceness of like trying to navigate, like, okay, I
we
have
could
top
be up
pair.
ace king, ace queen, or
Right.
even queen king would have had
Hmm.
2 pair or queen ace.
So you talked a little bit about AI. Obviously,
Yeah,
I think, yeah, you and I got like what was coffee or I know I ate a breakfast burrito. It's like my brain is like you ate a really good breakfast taco. Um, and I feel like we were talking about AI, and I feel like so much has even evolved from that point. I think that was probably like 6 months ago or something like that. What are you kind of thinking about these LLMs and where does this go? Like, are you in the camp of like this is the beginning of the end for humanity is sort of like the hyper intelligence and super intelligence, things like that? Or like, do you feel like the LLM space is like not quite tapped out, but it's closer to the ceiling than not, if that makes sense? Like, where are you at on like where are we at in this AI LLM maybe specifically journey?
yeah. I think I don't think we're close to the end of humanity for sure. I do foresee us getting to AGI in the next, like 3-4 years. Uh, Software AGI, maybe a little bit longer for kind of hardware AGI to catch up. But I don't think that's going to spell the end of humanity. I think LLMs are extremely powerful, and we're a few innovations away from making them useful. And I think those innovations won't necessarily just be scaling in data. I think there is a lot of scaling to do still. Microsoft keeps talking about like a $10 billion cluster, $100 billion cluster. I mean, that's going to be orders of magnitude in just a year or two, whereas Moore's law was, doubling every few years. So, but probably call, see what
Yeah,
happens.
so we have ace 10 here. We're kind of middle position. There's 7 people on this table, so I don't know really call what, but like 2 away from the button. It's pot small, big raise for this table, $1.38. What are you thinking
Yeah,
here?
we'll probably fold an ace 10. Yeah,
All right.
they're behind us too. But I think that kind of what I'm seeing and what we're seeing, Gradient.ai focuses mostly on enterprise workflows, but there's also the consumer side of it. We can fold that. And I think on the consumer side, you're probably willing to deal with some hallucinations, some errors, but on the enterprise side, that's not really a possibility. We work with healthcare companies, legal companies, finance companies. Um, you can't have mistakes. Um, You'd think that about security companies, but then last weekend we had the whole CrowdStrike thing. So, it was a big deal, but it was a one-time event, right? Whereas LLMs make mistakes, I don't know, 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000. And getting it down from 1 in 1,000 to 1 in 10,000, 99.999 is actually a 10x improvement,
Right.
which is huge. So even if you do that order of magnitude and you imply that you get an improvement. So I think it's going to be more about innovation. And this is why a lot of people are looking at agents and they're looking at workflows. Instead of doing prompt engineering, they talk about flow engineering. That's kind of how I'm thinking about it. I think a lot of the space is starting to think that way. But I'm also not sure if that'll be the end all be all. The one thing I've learned, we chatted, I think, probably, 10 months ago, probably. I was at a wedding in Austin. And back then, people were like, fine tuning. Then it was RAG. Then it was long context. Now it's agents. and kind of all of them are being combined. But 6 months from now, it could be something completely different.
Right.
But I do think LLMs have been the underpinning of it all. And I think Facebook's chief scientist is one of the few people who doesn't believe it can get there. Um, there are others certainly agree with him, but it seems like data, scale, and a couple of these innovations, like some specific ideas and research papers that come out.
Yeah, I'm not. You might know, and so I apologize if putting you on the spot, but like I feel like what Midjourney has done was so in tandem with what ChatGPT has done. Is there a similar innovation? Are those two different tracks? Like why did Midjourney all of a sudden get great right around the same time ChatGPT got great? Is that just a coincidence? Or are they relying on something similar? Do you have any idea?
Um, I don't know specifically Midjourney's story. I know more about OpenAI's story, um, but I think that it it all relies on the same underpinning technology, which was transformers, and kind of, and
I
they're using
see.
it for visual or text, and then now ChatGPT 4.0 and Llama's new thing are doing multimodal. They're doing it in different ways, actually. Um, Now, Facebook published their entire kind of weights and process. So I think it'll be in a few days, once I've had a chance to look at the paper and some others have reviewed it, we'll understand how they did it. But I think Transformer still underpins it. It's still kind of these large language models built on Transformers, or these visual models built on Transformers. What people realized, I think, around the same time, certainly OpenAI did with GPT-2, I think, was just that you could add more data and get a better output, which was not necessarily what people expected, I think. Um,
Mhm.
why did people not necessarily expect that is because we've always had an AI and machine learning kind of structured labeled data and unlabeled data, let's call here. Um, and I think that why would throwing 10 times more unlabeled data create a better output?
Mm,
Or human language. Like how do
right.
you build a language model? And it seems like, this neural network is somehow creating that better model. And I think it's doing the same thing for images and videos.
Just kind of
Um,
picking up all that. And 75 cent raise to us
yeah,
here.
let's call that as well. Yeah,
So
so
for the
here
audience, we have pocket fives here, flops 232.
well, it's perfect flop. I mean, other than a 5, it's about as good as it can get.
What do you want to do?
Let's make a half pot bet. Like $1.50. Yeah. Um, and so I think that perhaps is why Midjourney came out around the same time. But now we're seeing all these models are coming out from all these providers.
Absolutely.
Probably bet half the pot again. They didn't seem to be particularly interested in this.
Yeah, so we got another quick call. And a 6 comes out. Check to us. 11 in the pot.
I don't want to make it any bigger at this point, so it could have
Check
a
it out.
2. Yeah.
I'm gonna find out. Oh, he caught the 9 on the turn.
Mm,
Mm.
Unlucky.
King 9,
Uh,
the guy was in there with, which I guess he was a big blind, but still.
yeah, but I think it was $1 pre-flop. Uh,
Oh,
we
you're right. It was. He
that's
called that with King 9. Dr. Steph 13. Sneaky little
feeling
man.
lucky.
All right.
Um,
Yeah,
so
okay. So you're
yes,
saying that like there's this transformers basically and throwing more data at it seemed to work in one
yeah.
sort of
Well,
language, and then it's starting to work across a bunch of different things.
I remember seeing this chart. It was like the cost to train the different models by year. And the biggest model that had been trained, I don't remember the exact number, but in 2018, 2019 was like 10, 15, $20 million. And then we just jumped to like GPT-2 was some number. And then now we've got $1 billion runs, $2 billion runs, $4 billion runs, $10 billion runs. And I don't think anybody would have made those investments if they didn't see those super promising early results that OpenAI kind of found.
Yeah, it's another question on this AI space that I've been personally debating a lot, and I'd love to hear your opinion on it. Is I've heard some smart minds say, like, hey, the way that we've been interacting with AI as it's defined kind of today is that we're really looking at more of a, I think it's a sustaining innovation, or I'm butchering my concept here, but like it's not a disruptive innovation as much as a sustaining innovation. And it's basically saying like, hey, if you have basically this big network of users, or you have a particular product that does a particular thing, it's really just like making it even better as opposed to allowing this whole new innovation type. Pocket sixes to us here.
Yeah,
What
let's
do you want
call
to do?
here. Um,
See if we can nail these pockets on this one. Let's get, like you said, it would be great to have a 5. I say let's flop 2 5s, and in this case, let's flop 2 6s.
oh, 2 6s. Well, you don't have too good of a hand because it
True,
reduces the probability of others having good hands.
true.
Your biggest winnings in poker tend to be when you have a good hand, but somebody else has a slightly worse hand. Aces versus kings, free
Right.
sixes versus pair of aces. But absolutely, it's nice to have the absolute, as they call it, the best hand. Okay, we got
The
it.
little 50-cent raise to us here.
Yeah. So yeah,
It's our
we're
boy
called.
Kerr Jam. We have
Oh
Kerr
yeah,
Jam's number as well.
yeah.
7 10 9.
Ooh, so we need an 8. Let's actually go ahead and bet into this and bet half the pot again. So we certainly don't have the best hand, but he could not have anything. And if
Yeah,
he
Kerr Jam's on
calls,
his phone. Like, this guy, he's lost 2 hands in a row to us. Yeah, he's Kerr Jam's scared. He
oh,
folded.
damn, we
Ducking
got
the
him.
double dragon. Well
Yeah.
played, sir. Well played, sir. Just to give
So
folks who are listening, we're down $5, which is I can't do the math like you probably can, but we bought in with 25. So we're doing not great, but not bad. After that
yeah, I mean, we
loss
have
on
that
the
one
poker pot.
against Dr. Step. Unfortunately, there were 3 wins versus Kerr Jam. Uh, let's call. We got pretty decent pot odds here. It's
Hell
not
yeah,
great.
good call on the pot odds here.
We're only paying 50 cents to see this, but now this hand sucks, so we can just check and fold to the rest of the hand, unless we get an ace. So yeah, you were kind of explaining sustaining innovation as,
Yeah, so I was saying like there's this like delineation between disruptive innovation or disruptive technology versus like a sustaining technology. I think it must have been technology was the word. Um, and like this idea that the way that the AI as we understand it today is really just sort of making the rich get richer. And I don't mean that necessarily in a capitalism way or anything. I doubt you want to do anything this far in the river, but spirit
yeah,
of
we'll just
asking.
check.
Um, and that like you have if say you have a big design tool or something, it's like, well, you just add AI and it augments your design tool. That there's not this sort of opportunity to do an entirely native disruptive AI model. I don't fully subscribe to that concept, but it does seem out of the gates. Hey, look at that quick win there. We
We
caught the 4
won.
on the river. Pot odds were good. Here we are.
Dr. Step didn't get anything this time.
But like it does seem like the incumbents are just adding AI to their thing. Maybe you have ChatGPT that's kind of broken the scene, or they're the ones who kind of started it, for lack of a better word. You have Midjourney, which I had never really seen that type of product before, which is sort of image generation as a service. But like beyond that, it does feel like most of the other players are just slapping it in their existing ecosystems, and it's thriving. I guess, do you have any thoughts on like is there an opportunity for like an entirely disruptive path here, or is it just something where everyone's going to slap it in and that's what the next wave looks like?
Yeah, I think a couple of thoughts there. One is that the incumbents are definitely spending more money here than they normally do on a new technology. I mean, Zuck talks about losing billions of dollars. I'm sure Microsoft and Google and Amazon are also doing the same. OpenAI is losing billions of dollars despite their amazing revenue. So I think that incumbents have a better system in place this time than normally when there's new technology. They often choose to maintain their old methods rather than kind of adapt this new disruptive technology, which is kind of this whole disruptive innovation thing. I don't think it's going to be one-sided, though. I think there will be a lot of startups that win. I think the startups that will win will be the ones that build the right application layers And like, I think foundational models are essentially becoming commoditized. I mean, literally with Meta's release this week, I mean, you have a state-of-the-art technology that you can run on your computer, assuming you have a sufficiently strong computer. And so and Zuckerberg seems dedicated to continuing to release it, his innovations. So I think it's going to be all about the application. And that's where you realize that, yeah, I mean, we thought that something like Figma couldn't show up, but it did show up. There were so many other
Right.
tools the incumbents had. Why didn't they just build that in? So it's the typical problem. So my thoughts are that once the cache cache problem is solved, because right now the cache problem is you need to train these models. But once that problem is solved and everything's commoditized, it'll be all at the app layer, and it will play out just like every other startup incumbent thing has, with this slight edge that I do think incumbents are blowing crazy amounts of money on it, something that's producing no revenue for them, or little to no revenue. Let's call.
Right. 6'5" suited for the audience here on the button, I think, or no? Are we one
Or
behind?
not.
The
Yeah.
UI here is a little throwing me off. Yeah, I buy that. I like the Figma example. Yeah, Jack 8. Ooh, not a great
Well,
flop for us.
and Figma is a great example to your point, though, because they are kind of taking AI and building it into their own system. Oh, now we've got a straight flush opportunity.
So, yeah, so for the audience of 4 of hearts is on the turn here. So we have 6-5 of hearts. There's an 8 of hearts out there. So things have gotten real interesting here. We have a lot of outs for a couple interesting things. As Meir said, straight flush draw here as well. Inside straight flush draw. Checks around. You want to bet this or you want to check it out?
Let's just check and see what happens. Souls.
9. All right.
Nothing. All right, so yeah, we can fold this one. So I think that Figma has launched their own AI stuff. I mean, they had some, I think, problems with their launch, but overall, they're going to probably succeed in that space to a certain extent. But I'm not sure they're going to capture the entire market. And they're always going to have, again, that same problem where when you're successful in a certain way, like let's say all your customers are designers. I mean, I don't think all Figma's customers are designers, but let's just apply it. Maybe AI design can be done by product managers and engineers. So
Right.
you've got a different customer base. Or do you want to be undercutting your own customer base while you're doing that? So it's a big decision for them to make. That's not necessarily the exact problem they'll run into, but the general idea.
I love that. One of my favorite stories from Innovator's Dilemma is, this, you've probably read it before, so, but I'm going to say it for the audience, I guess, sake, but this idea of, I think it was the, like land excavators, and the market was dominated by these big skyscraper ones. It was like 1910s or something like that. They're building out, downtown New York and downtown Chicago, and they want as few as scoops to go as deep as possible. That takes a city block. And there was the invention of the, I think, pneumatic, kind of the one with the hydraulic system, and it fit on the back of a pickup truck. And those entrepreneurs were trying to sell to the guys building in the city, and they're like, dude, they were using steam-powered ones. They're like, I want the biggest, widest, deepest steam-powered one you got. And to your point, like that customer base was what people perceived to be the market. And then it turned out as the 1940s and kind of these, the people came back from war, and the suburbs start to explode. Like that technology, all of a sudden, it's like, well, like I build suburbs. Like I don't want big trench things that build a city block wide thing. I need something highly mobile that will do, power lines and ditches and, a quick water pipe over there. And like, to your point, what I love is like, it's like, yeah, to maybe designers, maybe AI applied to sort of Figma space is sort of locked in and dead. Photoshop, Adobe and Figma and insert 1 or 2 more, like they got it. But I love this idea of like, what is Figma for product managers? Like, that's wild. I love that. That's great.
Yeah,
That's really good.
Innovators, that was a great book. Fun fact: the guy who wrote that, Clayton Christensen, invested it or led the first round of my first startup.
Oh, wow.
Wow,
Man.
Fun. It was fun.
I'm not gonna like one up you with a double fun fact, but Clayton taught this guy named Bob Mesta, who I absolutely idolize, and Bob invested in Dolly. So we have some there's some Clayton Christensen intertanglement there.
Just thinking, I think we've talked about this before because I met Bob in New York through Clayton, and you had mentioned we maybe had a mutual connection on LinkedIn or something. So I kind of it was in the back of my head, but yeah, that's amazing. I
That was
think
the inside straight shot right there, the back of your mind.
yeah, the great minds that they are. I mean, they're both amazing. I don't know Bob as well as you do, but his
Yeah,
jobs to be done, obviously.
and I don't know Clayton, but they both obviously subscribe, and obviously Clayton's done a ton of writing, and Bob's done a lot of talking about the topic. And by the way, do you read Stratechery? Are you Ben Thompson reader as well?
Yeah. I'm mostly with that.
You want
Let's.
to fold this queen eye?
Oh
Or
yeah, big raise. Yeah, let's fold that.
yeah, I was kind of, I don't know, I was had a good vibe about it, but this $2.40 raise was scared me off too. Yeah, I mean, I think that like, yeah, there's something really fascinating about moving, basically to your point, downstream. Like what I love about you did is you basically said, hey, product managers are effectively, downstream of a designer as it relates to like design talent output, and so make the core user be able to up level themselves down market effectively. And that's great, man. You have my head spinning on that. I really like it.
Yeah, I mean,
uh,
I think that that's the promise of AI, and in a lot of ways, and why I think when people talk about it, Satya I think talks about this a lot. Microsoft, he says we're not going to get rid of all jobs. He argues maybe we'll create more jobs. I don't know if we'll create more jobs. I think other tech revolutions have, so I'm not discounting that possibility. But I certainly, like, the reason I don't believe it's going to be the end of humanity, which is how we started with this discussion, is that I think it's going to make a smaller number of people able to do more jobs, which kind of is this like big idea that some Altman and some others have said, like $1 billion companies that are one person. So it's
right,
not, instead of having 14 people at my AI startup that gets $1 billion valuation, I'll have one person. Uh,
right.
just huge cut down in number of people. But theoretically, if you have enough output, you'll have more of these $1 billion startups. So
Yeah, and then you mean the whole like, I always think of Twitch streamers and just being like, and even the evolution of Twitch streamers. Like if you would have told my middle school self that I could have been funny playing video games on the internet and made a living, like I'm actually feel thankful that I didn't grow up in this era, because I'd probably be a Twitch streamer playing video games and trying to be funny and get people laugh and subscribe. And I'm glad now that I've experienced a more robust career that that wasn't my career. But what
now it's time to podcaster and make money.
yeah. I chose a much better pastime.
Got it.
Playing poker. Dude, that's such a good call. Oh God.
I mean, the guy who first blackjack, right? He was on
Yeah.
all, yes, like,
Tim
whatever.
something. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
no,
great. Yeah, he's great.
yeah.
Certainly partially inspired by what he's doing, and he's certainly a lot more charismatic than I am in it. Although I'm just not a blackjack guy. I like the ebb and flows of the poker game rather than this like run oriented thing with blackjack. But I digress. But my point is, like, I can't believe how Twitch, to your point, it's like you wouldn't have predicted that easily with the internet being invented. I feel like the smartest people in the room would have been like, libraries are going to be disrupted, and media, and it's like, but like this sort of emergent behavior of like, I want to watch other people play video games that I can play, but they're better and they're funnier than, and then now this sort of like second level. I mean, the NPCs on TikTok, like, what intellectual could have predicted that there are going to be people who pretend to be video game characters that aren't real characters that just react to gifs and stuff? I'm like, and live streaming just eating or doing their laundry or being a security officer, and I'm like, I can't believe how it sort of exploded in that way. And so I do think of like AI in that same way, where it's like, yeah, you have $1 billion company. It's like that guy has problems from a business perspective that it's hard to even comprehend of what those problems exactly are. And like he's in need products and services that are really unique to very small team, high valuation businesses, which are going to look a lot different than huge companies with like medium-ish valuations and sort of low valuation per employee. Like it's kind of wild. It's kind of hard to imagine that how many second order, third order roles, jobs, services could even emerge in that world. So I buy that. I buy that.
Yeah, your comment about the NPCs on TikTok makes me think. I can't remember what the startup was. I have to look it up, and find it. But they were creating online personas that were totally kind of imaginary. I mean, they were kind of, you know, figurines in some sense. You know, it
Yeah.
was
Is it
they
Little
weren't.
Michaela?
No,
Okay.
I don't
All
remember.
right.
But it's like
It
imagine
doesn't
like
matter. Yeah. Yeah.
like this rabbit, and like that kind of talks and dances, but actually builds a social media presence.
Right.
This was, I'm sure, like 4 or 5 years ago. So I mean, I wonder if whether that startup is now using AI, or there are now AI NPCs on TikTok making money. I mean, almost certainly, but like, how successful are they?
Yeah, no, so there's a company that did this character named Lil Michaela. It's like Lil, like Lil, like little, abbreviation for little, and she had like, yeah, like 2 million Instagram followers. And then what she would do is like she would wear merch, and then they would sell that merch, and then like she would, it was like this. To your point, it was this whole character. And yeah, I think it was like 2020, really kind of during the pandemic, and they were trying to kind of get into digital wearables and things like that. But yeah, that trend does seem to have kind of slowed down a bit. But like, to your point, like, yeah, that inconceivable that would even be an option, that kids might be gravitating towards these entirely, and then let alone like, I wouldn't be surprised as they age, like, who's to say that I wouldn't follow an AI personality or an entirely made up personality, as long as they're entertaining, like, and the algorithm keeps feeding them to me. Like, who
I
am I to
mean,
even sort of
they're going
judge?
to
Yeah.
be personalized to you. I mean, that's the big promise. Not the big promise, but one of the promises is like, you have a movie where it's James Bond, but instead of being the stereotypical white James Bond, maybe it's an Indian James Bond in India,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe for you, Chad, it'll be a James Bond that you identify more with. But the whole
Mm-hmm.
story arc could be something that you like. So like, probably from a dopamine perspective, it's going to be pretty easy for an AI to outdo any human being, which will be an
Yeah.
interesting problem for us to solve.
Yes. Random sidebar. I loved Westworld season 1. I thought it was one of the best seasons I'd ever seen in my entire life. And I still to this day will scream on any rooftop that will have me, which is like the opportunity that show sort of missed with doing one-off episodes of random characters that are going through that experience, right? So like, you take a shot from one of the opening scenes, and the characters, let's say, walking into a bar, they kick open the door and the bartender gives them a drink. It's like, I would pay money and I would watch a 15-minute, 20-minute episode of just who's this bartender? What's he do? What's the story there? What was he programmed? Is he fake? Is he been in the park a long time? Has he been short term? Like, and then sign me up for the next one. And so when I think about AI, I'm like, well, HBO obviously had a decision to make of like, how are we going to, how do we want to make a great show, and how do we, make sure? Oh, Queen Ace here. What do you want to do here?
Well, let's raise for the first time. Let's raise to 75 3x.
75. Let's see if my betting options are 3x pot, and I think it was 6x. So I got to like do a little conversion in my head. So yeah, anyone listening here, we got to re-raise to 264.
Oh no, our favorite person left, the one that we beat every time.
Yeah, this is gut
We,
verum.
we got a call. It's kind of hard
Let's
to
do it.
not what
Yeah, let's
happens.
do it.
We
Heads
got
up here. King Jack drops.
we got position. Yeah, we need a 10 to be sure, an ace to be. Yeah, let's call probably here. I think we have enough.
Ooh,
Well, that's the worst that will happen to us because yeah, let's
flush draw out there. You want to check this? Bet it? What do you want to do?
well, they checked. That was interesting. Let's check.
Gut verum.
Yeah.
Check.
Yeah, let's check.
Ooh, queen on the river. There's a flush out there.
Check may pay off more than we thought it would. So if they bet, it'll be good. If they check, then we'll probably bet.
Gut verum. I bet 635.
Okay, let's race to 1270.
Woo! Big action.
Could have 10 ace, and we could be behind, or we could have two diamonds.
Oh, you had
Whoa.
the ace flush. Oh, gut verum does us in. I like the call. I like what you did. Nothing wrong there. Nothing wrong there. Man, nice pot. So just for the audience, so there was a flush draw out there on that queen that we picked up, second highest pair, and then we got a 3 of a kind on the river, but he had already had the ace high flush, which I think was no, he could have had a full house of some kind.
And he checked on the turn as well, so he did a pretty nice.
Checked on the turn. Yeah, well done, Gutverum. That was the seat that we were dominating. We're down to 335. Looking rough. We might have to go all in here and just see if we can double up and then leave the table or something.
Let's go crazy.
See how it goes. Yeah.
But one side as you were talking about, like how you can make money as a streamer, or you can make money as Mr. Beast. I think one of the big things to remember is like there's very few of those people that make money, just because of the ratio of viewers to people. So it's not as if you had chosen to become a streamer, you would have necessarily been successful. Now, you, Chad, knowing your persistence and hard work, you probably would have. But as a percentage, right, for every 1,000 people that want to be in the NBA, one person ends up in the NBA. And the same thing is true of Mr. Beast. I mean, for Mr. Beast, it's more than 1,000, but for streamers, maybe
Right.
1,001. So it's not as if it's like an easy career path. Getting a computer science degree is a much safer like career path, I think, for most people.
Yeah, and for the audience's benefit, this is coming from the guy who I was like, "Hey, man, you want to join my new podcast?" And then he goes, "Hey, by the way, I saw this link that says every day there's a new podcast that's created that doesn't last. What was it like? It's like 8 episodes or something like that." So
Wow.
your behind the scenes matches your on the scenes. But no, you're totally right, man. Like, yeah, it's certainly a grind, and there's a power law distribution that seems to be amplified essentially, with the internet, that it's like, okay, yeah, like if you can watch Mr. Beast every time and he puts out something weekly, like, he's going to just dominate sort of that demand. And so the next level, the second to Mr. Beast is, he's halfway down the stack, not a little bit down the stack.
So I've got an AI that you take your podcast and you run it through a video AI editor that edits like different like tonalities, styles, like just like changes the way you talk, and then you run an A/B test in true startup
I mean,
fashion.
that would be. I was talking to a buddy and he had an idea similar to that. Well, I shouldn't say it was similar, but it was like, what if I had like a poster behind me, and that it was basically like just it was with like personalized target advertising that was relative to the sponsor and the person listening, right? So you're like trying to get like, what are they talking about? What would be the best sponsor to kind of drop into this segment, and then swap, kind of like the NBA does with the courts, really, but on a more personalized basis. But I think you need a whole platform to sort of do that well. Like, you need to control the distribution side, I guess. But
Yeah.
what'd be really sad is if I did your idea and it comes back and it's just it's a 180 for my personality. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, everything you naturally do the opposite and it'll do better.
Well, yeah, that would tell you that podcasting is probably not for you. But
Yes, that's fair.
I think as a founder, you've probably put on a lot of shows, right? I mean, I think that's part of being a founder, to VCs, to yourself. So you've taken on other personas. 180 is probably not the persona that you took on. Well, I can certainly see the pain of realizing that would be the most successful. But I guess the other thing with podcasts is, right, you have different audiences, right? I doubt that Mr. Beast. I mean, I don't know exactly what Mr. Beast audience is, but I doubt it would be the same that the podcast that you run attracts.
Yeah.
Or that intersection is going to different. So you might get different audiences with different things.
Oh, I know. One thread I wanted to wrap back on was I was just talking about that Westworld mini episode thing, and I was just saying like that.
King 3 would have been so good.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we got a king on the flop, 3 on the turn,
Well,
and then a 2. But it's like that ability to fully immerse into a world that effectively becomes infinite, right? Because if I can go to the bartender, and let's just say that the creators of Westworld sort of, say like, hey, like the bartender, like the writer of Westworld's like, I don't really know the full backstory, but like I'm gonna put in a couple little variables here that kind of outline a skeleton of who and what this character is. So you could do that now for every single character in the experience, so people can fully immerse themselves into every little nook and cranny of the show. And then I could imagine that, let's say there's a scene of showing the bartender being born. Well, it's like now you have a whole other set of characters that are like the bartender's parents, in theory, could be really interesting. And so like, the derivative, like you could find yourself watching like the great uncle of the bartender in that one scene in the Westworld, and it just turns out like if enough people love that particular character, that's the one that sort of, when you go to Max to watch Westworld, it's like, hey, everyone's watching, mini trailer episode, 539, which is the bartender's great uncle, but it's like a banger episode, like, so you have this like personalization plus
Yeah,
algorithm
like
service the best of the top.
like make your own adventure experience.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, that's interesting. You should pitch that to HBO, the Max.
man,
And
yeah.
get second guest, get a Max executive on here.
That's, I know we're getting close to time. I think we should either go all in or fold something. So maybe why don't we go one more time around the
Yeah,
horn on the blinds if you got time for that, and if we see something we like, we'll just go all in. If not, we'll call it an episode. Sound good?
save a little bit for some, ice cream.
A little bit of ice cream. I know,
What
it's
site are you playing
286.
on? I've never seen that.
So this is I think it's called coin poker. Let me look. Might have to beat
That's
that out.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a crypto based one, and I'm absolutely playing in a jurisdiction that is absolutely legal, and so I thought it would be good to use crypto to facilitate the transaction. But what is cool about it does seem to be, I don't know if it's like blockchain based entirely, but I think the way that they're doing like the verification of the hand and it being fair has something to do with being on the on chain, which I thought was cool.
All right, this feels like the all-in hand here.
Just do it. You want to do it? Boom. Ace 5. It's against Gutverm, the guy who stole our money. He
Ah.
calls. Ace Queen. Gut hates us.
Oh my God.
And we got some outs. Nope.
Well,
Gutverm takes all of our money.
we went from
All of our
winning
money.
hands against that seat to losing all our hands against that seat. That was, oh
Yeah,
man, what a game.
It's a great point.
That was fun. Yeah, I think
What game? Well,
the cool.
they should say that again.
I said this is a cool format. It's fun to like play some hands together.
Hopefully it listens well, right? But I really do appreciate you hopping on and talking. I'm not trying to compliment you just because you came on the show, but like this whole AI designer for product managers is really blowing my mind. Like I'm finding myself wanting to go chat with GPT, which is hilarious, and just being like, hey, explain that concept, and then like just give me a list of like 50 other variations of this. I just want to like go stress test the edges of the idea. It's like what's the layer down of all these different things. I'm kind of fascinated by it. It's a great insight. So I might have to text you.
Well,
And be like,
I'd
hey,
be remiss if I don't recommend Claude because they have the artifacts that
oh, that's right.
make it more real for you. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure ChatGPT will come out with something like that.
What's your go-to? Claude's your go-to over ChatGPT for like everyday stuff?
So I use them interchangeably depending on what I want to do. I think for most tasks for my personal life, it is irrelevant which one I'm using, right? I mean, it's like, hey, make this email more professional, make this email less salesy or something like that. I'll check this work, make this into a chart. But when you get into some of the more complicated use cases that we do at work, or maybe I'm working on something more complicated, then different kind of engines perform differently. And so I ended up trying both of them. But I would say I use Claude a little bit more than I use ChatGPT. But right now, I would say, honestly, it doesn't matter for the majority of tasks.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I'm an iOS guy, and so the ChatGPT widget, I don't know what they call it, that I can put on my locked home screen to just talk to it, sort of like the pre-Siri integration, that makes me like a heavy ChatGPT user. And then if I'm coding something, I'm almost always in ChatGPT, and then inevitably I get hung up on like one thing, and I hop over to Claude, and Claude fixes it for me, and then I stay there until I run out of credits, and then I come back to ChatGPT.
Yeah,
That seems to be my journey.
we're definitely in the ride sharing era. Remember when everything was super cheap because it was kind of fun.
Yes.
I think we're kind of in that for AI right now, where if you want to just play around with AI, there's so many free credits. I mean, you can go to the websites test themselves, but there's other aggregators, right?
Right.
I'll give you free credits on top, and then you can use it for any tool. So, I mean, if you wanted to, not spend any money and get into AI, this is pretty easy.
Yeah. It's wild. Well, hey man, thanks for the time. We'll end the episode. Hang on the line, and thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, Chad.